I had those dreams of being that cool girl in the cool office and all this stuff. And here I am in this like small company. But little did I know that I was going to have some of the best mentors in my entire life. One of my bosses had actually been in the New York City advertising agency circuit her whole career. So she took me and introduced me to so many people in those places. She took me to tour those offices. I made so many connections, networking. And then also the benefit of working at a small company that I think is kind of underrated is that you get to do so much. So a lot of my colleagues, we'd come to class and talk about what we were doing in our internships. And a lot of them were doing like intern projects, which were just kind of like glorified homework assignments in a way. And I was actually like creating a blog for the company, running their social media. Like they needed me, they really did. They didn't have, someone to do all of their marketing. And then of course, also being in luxury real estate, I got to go to these amazing New York City apartments that I will never be able to afford.
In today's episode of Life's Next Lesson Plan, I sit down with Brittany Emond, a former student whose journey took her from aspiring magazine journalist to a thriving career in employer branding. Brittany's story is one of ambition, adaptability, and learning to trust the process. She shares the lessons she's learned about career pivots, the value of small companies, negotiating your worth, and why sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the biggest growth. If you've ever had to let go of an old dream to embrace a new opportunity, this episode is for you. I'm so excited for you to hear her story. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Life's Next Lesson Plan. I'm Rachel, and I started this podcast during my 29th and last year as a high school teacher. The goal of my work with Life's Next Lesson Plan, as well as my Live and Learn Patreon, is to create a connection where we are all teachers. We all have lessons and stories to share that can help others. I'm so fortunate to be able to extend the four walls of my previous classroom to an unlimited audience, where we can all learn from each other. And my guests are some of the most inspirational people with the best stories and lessons I know, which is why I want to share them with you. Their words are something everyone should hear. It is my hope that you are able to take away something from each episode to apply to your own life, whether that be a career search, path to a more fulfilling life, or new ideas on current topics. Today, I'm bringing to you a much anticipated episode. I've been having this person's name on my list since I started podcasting because, as I was telling her, I repeat her job to so many people. I can't even count now how many people I have told her career journey to. It's really, hopefully you'll find it as fascinating as I do. And Brittany and I were just talking about the fact that I get to see the journeys of all of these former students from their beginning in high school to now years and years later. And I'm so privileged today to bring to you Brittany Emond, who is a former journalism student of mine. We have many, many great stories from the Pubs Lab and beyond. But I'll let Brittany give a little bit of introduction of herself, and then we'll start to talk about our connection and our time together in the Pubs Lab.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the amazing intro. I'm super happy to be here. I've been listening to the podcast and excited to share my career journey and share some hopefully good lessons and tidbits from along the way. So as I want to call you Mrs. Rao.
Yeah, you can say Rachel. It's okay.
As Rachel said. My name is Brittany Emond. I am a senior manager of employer brand and recruitment marketing at Sephora. So literally a dream job. I also had no idea what employer brand and recruitment marketing it was before I started this. It kind of fell into my lap. So I will be discussing kind of that whole journey, but essentially my job is to position Sephora as an employer of choice for prospective candidates, and I work on a lot of recruitment marketing campaigns, So I own our Sephora Life Instagram, our Sephora LinkedIn channel, our career website, lots of fun things. So yeah, my job kind of expands to all of marketing within the HR organization. But yeah, it's really, really fun. And of course, I love Sephora. So that definitely helps working for a company that you love.
Yeah, you definitely have the dream job of many girls I know in my life. And I have brought home that black and white striped bag into my house many times. So,
and if you're wondering, yes, we do get a lot of free products, and the discount is also amazing.
So my daughter tells me, yeah. So she's like, Mom, they get all of this product. And I'm like, yes, I'm aware. This is a goal for you then. You could do this.
Yes, absolutely.
So our roots began, as I said, in the pubs lab when it was just a tiny little back room, I remember, because now I have this large classroom. And it was kind of nice, though, because you couldn't escape each other. You had to sort of be forced to bond. And we had a close staff and we had so much fun. So I know that you have thought a little bit about your most memorable pubs moment that you spent in high school. Do you want to share that? I love the story.
Yeah, no, I remember, yeah, I mean, like, I remember signing up for journalism pubs class back in high school and just being so interested, and then like falling in love with it so fast, because I quit orchestra actually to open up my schedule to do stuff that I was more passionate about. And I remember everyone was like, you need to have your fine arts credits and whatever, and I was like, I just want to do this. And so I did, and I loved it. And we were so passionate that it was like Katie Mandersky and Sydney Benson and I, and we were like so passionate about the newspaper and everything. And you had introduced going to this conference in San Francisco, and it was actually the same weekend or week as prom. And I didn't have a boyfriend in high school, and I didn't have anyone that I really wanted to go with. And I was just like, well, it's junior prom. I can go senior prom. And I actually was a huge fan of the show, The Hills. And this moment in that show kept ringing in my head, where she refuses to go to Paris so that she can spend through her Teen Vogue internship. She was supposed to go to Paris, and she was like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to spend the summer with my boyfriend in Malibu. And then they end up breaking up, and I was like, I have to choose San Francisco over prom. I just knew it. I was like, I have to do this for my career. Like, I want to get out of Wisconsin. I have big dreams. And that was such a big moment for me, like going to a big city for the first time and like really feeling like my career could take off and like that anything was possible. So yeah, that's all thanks to you and really driving that. That was such a big moment for me in high school.
That was, I think, the first trip we took as a pub staff ever. There were four of you guys, and seeing, I think, all the other journalism schools and what they were doing, and they had like flags and they had matching sweatshirts, right? And you were like, whoa, this is like the Super Bowl.
Like, four girls with a dream.
Exactly. But it really paved the way for future travel and then kind of seeing what was out there and what was possible. In fact, today I had out because the kids in journalism right now do not know that we had a newspaper. They don't know that we had a news magazine. They don't know that we used to do the booster magazines. And I had them all out today. And I mentioned the three of you, Katie and Sydney, because I held up the spread that you did, the drug spread, we called it, where you guys planned all of that. And it was so juicy and controversial. And I haven't had journalists recently who want to really dig for those sort of juicy, controversial stories. And when they look at the work that you guys did, they're like, whoa. And I was like, yeah.
Definitely. I remember like people were talking about it in the hallways, and I was just like, yeah, like I was career over reputation at that point. I was like, I don't care, like this story is gonna get me awards. And I think it did. I think we did win an award for that story. So I was like, you know what, like, yeah. And I was so into it, so it was so rewarding.
Yeah, it's fun to go back and to have all of that to look at as well. So you started out, I recognized you almost immediately as someone who had a passion and a talent for pubs. And I think I gave you the nudge to apply for editor. And, once you did that and once you traveled, it was like no turning back for you. It was like you immersed yourself and you had goals and you just wanted to continually improve. So can you share a little bit with us then how that kind of influenced, what you did in high school and then college? And then, of course, we'll get into the post-college stuff, but where it kind of started.
Yeah, no, I think definitely, like, as you can tell, the passion was like just so deep within me. And I think a lot of it had to do with like the media I was consuming at the time. So like I grew up on like Sex in the City and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days and like all these things or like 13 Going on 30, where the main character woman was this like badass. I don't know if I can say
Yes, you can.
okay. Like badass magazine editor woman. And like I just saw myself so much in those women. And I think it was like, and I loved writing so much and I loved design. Like I just loved all of those things. So that was kind of like where that passion like drove me to like continue doing that. And like I really saw high school as just like a blip in my journey. It wasn't like everything to me. So that was like really where when I started looking for colleges, I was really looking for ones with really good journalism programs and especially magazine journalism programs, because that was really like the big thing. It was like with all those shows and everything, like I loved Cosmo, I loved Teen Vogue, Vanity Fair, Glamour, like all of those magazines were like what I grew up on and like what I still consumed at that time. It was still kind of that weird in between where like social media was becoming huge, but then also print still had a place. So it was interesting, but it was like still driving me in that direction because I was like, oh, I want to be here for this industry shift and everything. So when I was looking for colleges, University of Missouri has a really, really great journalism program. I did tour Mizzou, as well as Wisconsin's journalism program specifically because I was so sure of my major that like the general school tour didn't really matter to me. I was just like, what is this program going to look like? Is it going to get me to where I need to be and all that stuff? And looking back, maybe this is just like a Midwestern thing, but I think Kelly also said this on hers, but it's like, I never even thought to go to like New York City where all the magazines were. I was just like, I want a big school experience and everything. And I have no regrets from that. Like I loved my experience at Mizzou. So yeah, that's where I ended up deciding to go. And they actually had like a sub major that was for magazine journalism specifically. So that was like exactly what I wanted to do. And I think that was what really led me once I got there to joining the magazine club and learning more about magazines, becoming president of the magazine club. Similar journey also to Kelly's.
Yeah.
And we were able to do this. I remember it was my freshman year, and freshmen didn't usually get to go on the New York trip, but I got to go on the New York trip, and we got to visit Mizzou alumni from all of these giant magazines and like BuzzFeed too, which was like huge at the time as well. And I remember getting there and just being like so in awe by these offices. And I think it just like furthered that like drive and that passion that I had that I know not everyone like has that drive and that passion, but like I think that's really what motivated me. And then like seeing the offices and seeing New York, I was like, okay, yes, like this is exactly what I want to do. This is everything. But I also had this like kind of conflicting feeling of like, okay, every time we went, because I went freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, every year we went, another magazine was getting cut. The print edition was getting cut. And it was kind of up in the air. I started like talking to these journalists about like what their day-to-day looked like and exactly what they were doing. And it was like in that era of like clickbait articles that were really, really popular. And they were like, we write 20 stories a day and they're all like 7 things you need to know. I was just like, and I just got like really overwhelmed by it. And the more I thought about where I wanted to be, it was like, do I really want to be a journalist or do I want to be in these big fancy offices in a big city? And so I made this like kind of like really tough decision like midway through my college career where I was like, do I want to stick with the magazine journalism track? They have like 35 tracks at Mizzou. So like this doesn't seem like a huge, like earth-shattering moment. But for me at like not 20 years old, I was like, oh my gosh, like everything I've worked for up until this moment is for nothing. Like I just felt like it was like, oh, if I don't stay with magazine, like I'm betraying my dream. I'm betraying like what 16-year-old me was so passionate about. Um, so that was like a really like that was a really trying moment for me where I was just really like kind of going back and forth. And then I talked to my parents about it. I talked to like some mentors at the school about it and everything and decided to change. I was still in the journalism school, but I changed from magazine to strategic communication. And the more I learned about like strategic communication, like advertising essentially was what the major was. The more I just learned about like the creativity and marketing and copywriting and things like that. And I was like, okay, this is literally what I liked from the beginning. It's not any different. It's just not the traditional journalism. So I think like just one of my main takeaways, and I tell this to young people all the time, is like, if you have a dream, changing your path a little bit or change your path completely is not like betraying your dream. It's not like nothing you've done up until that point is meaningless, you know? And I think at that point, that's all I could think about was like, oh, like I went to San Francisco on a journalism convention. How dare I not do journalism for the rest of my life, you know? And I think, yeah, it's easy to see things as like the biggest deal ever at that age too. And with more perspective, I'm just like every little moment led me to where I am now. And I don't regret a second of that. So yeah, I think that's a big piece of advice I have when it comes to like the college era and changing your major and figuring out what you want to do. Like, don't be discouraged by like your brain kind of telling you, maybe this isn't right for me, or maybe I want to like change directions a little bit. Like that's an okay feeling to have. And that's also a very normal feeling to have as you learn more information.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been hearing this, I don't know how long it's been around, but this strategic communications major. And I don't know, there's like the straight journalism major. And then like you said, a really specific journalism school is going to have all of these small niches, but it's more like of an umbrella than under the umbrella. Am I understanding right?
Yeah.
There's like different skills.
It was like journalism was the umbrella, and then strategic communication was another umbrella. And then under that umbrella, you could do like PR or art direction and graphic design, or you could do copywriting or account management. So there were so many like niches within it. And I think this is also kind of specific to Mizzou. Like that journalism school is so built out. And that was actually something I struggled with too, because I was like, I don't want to pigeonhole myself. Like, I don't want to feel so pigeonholed. Like even in pubs, like I was like, I like doing the design stuff and I also like doing the writing stuff. And I felt like some of my professors were trying to like pigeonhole me just because that's how the advertising industry is. So you're either a copywriter or a graphic designer. And I never actually had a career in the advertising industry. I've always worked on the brand side of things. And I will say I've never not appreciated my graphic design background, even though I'm not a graphic designer full time. Like that is something that like I feel like they tried to be like, you're focusing too much on this. You need to focus on that, like, and I was like, I can't be pigeonholed. I like being a jack of all trades. And I will say, if you are someone who's like, I just can't figure out, what area to like really focus and hone in on, that can be your area, is the fact that you are really strategic and you can see things from like a bird's eye view and you have experience in all areas. I'm a very visual person. So like even today at work, I had an idea and I'm not going to create the final creative, but I can mock up the creative and say, this is what I'm trying to communicate. So, like I can pass that off to a designer and be like, here's like my general idea, and they can take it and make it beautiful and use their skills and things like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of different majors available now, and it's hard to navigate. And I would say, even if you choose a major and you're not like 100% confident in it, you can always use the skills that you've learned in college and like take them with you into different careers.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. And this is something that I still tell my journalists, because for their exam, they build a portfolio of all their work. And my message is always be as well-rounded in that portfolio as possible, right? Because first of all, I want you to try everything, because unless you try it, you don't really know. Like most kids used to sign up for journalism because they like to write, and then they end up falling in love with design, like you said, or photography, right? Or now I have vloggers, and then this week they said a couple of them want to start a podcast this trimester, and some did that last year. So I want them to try everything. And like you said, you never know down the road where you might rely on some of those skills, right? So, you know, and yes, if some kids want to specialize in something, they can. I make them do 2 assignments a week now. One of their assignments can be their specialty, but then their second assignment, I kind of want them to play around with as much as possible to have that background. And whether they go into journalism or not, I would argue, especially the soft skills that they learn in a journalism class, time management, collaboration, communication, right? Like deadlines, that's all so important. But all of the skills, interviewing and writing and being able to visually communicate something, they're going to help you in some facet.
100%. Yeah. I remember at Mizzou, you have to do, even if you're going into like broadcast journalism, like we had every type of journalism, but everyone had to take news writing. And that class was so hard. And they made you like write like you were in an actual newspaper environment. And it was so hard. And everyone's like, this isn't even what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do marketing and I wanted to design pretty things, but everyone had to do it. And I will say, I learned so much in that course that like I still use to this day. And so I agree. It's like that well-rounded nature. And then also like when you're in high school and college, like that's your learn time. So like learn as much as you can while you're there. And like you're going to continue learning once you're in the real world too. And you're going to bring those experiences with you like everywhere you go through your whole career.
Absolutely. So you were finding kind of your journey and being reflective. You knew that maybe, you know, you wanted to change your path a little bit, and you were learning how to dabble into new areas that interested you. I know you did an internship or more than one internship. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you see the importance of that, how that played a role for you as well?
Yeah. So I think internships were an incredible supplement to my college experience because you actually get to actually like apply the things that you're learning in the classroom setting. And the Mizzou way of learning was really like hands-on already, but just being in a company and then understanding like how to work with clients and understanding like the larger business model and like how your department works with other departments was super important to me. So going into, it was my junior year going into senior year, and I was in a graphic design class. I thought that was kind of where I wanted my niche to be within strategic communications, but I wasn't really sure. But I really wanted to study abroad. But I settled for a study away program, which was in New York City, but you had to get your own internship. So it was like an internship program with Mizzou classes, and you had like a small, I think it was like 25 of us cohort. So it was a really cool program. It was all through the journalism school, and everyone interned in things from like agencies to, we had a few people at CNN, like really, really cool internships, but you all had to find them yourselves. So I remember asking my professor, like, how can I find a graphic design internship in New York City? And he was like, oh, you're not ready for that. And I was like, what? So it was like this shocking moment of him being like, yeah, you're not good enough for that. And I was just like, I was shocked, honestly. But also I feel like that feedback also drove me to look in other areas where I might have been wasting my time in graphic design because I wasn't a graphic designer. At the end of the day, I had graphic design skills, but it wasn't what was right for me. So it was hard feedback to get, but then the more I thought about it, the more I was really thinking about what do I like in this strategic communication area and what internships am I seeing? And social media was really taking off at that point, like from a business perspective. So I was like, social media, it feels like I can be strategic, I can be creative and do maybe some graphic design, but then also be like analytical and I can do copywriting. So it really felt like this like combination of all the different things within the strategic communication major that I really wanted to explore. So I started looking into social media internships. I ended up getting an internship at a small luxury real estate company. And I felt kind of imposter syndrome a little bit, or maybe imposter syndrome is not the right word. I I felt a little bit like a black sheep in the program because everyone else had these internships at these huge agencies and these huge news companies, and I think someone had an internship at the New York Times, and I just felt kind of like, what am I doing here at this luxury real estate company? And I had that, like, I was a little embarrassed, to be honest, and I wanted to be, like, I had those dreams of being that cool girl in the cool office and all this stuff, and here I am in this like small company. But little did I know that I was going to have some of the best mentors in my entire life. One of my bosses had actually been in the New York City advertising agency circuit her whole career. So she took me and introduced me to so many people in those places. She took me to tour those offices. I made so many connections, networking. And then also the benefit of working at a small company that I think is kind of underrated is that you get to do so much. So a lot of my colleagues, we'd come to class and talk about what we were doing in our internships. And a lot of them were doing like intern projects, which were just kind of like glorified homework assignments in a way. And I was actually like creating a blog for the company, running their social media. Like they needed me. They really did. They didn't have, someone to do all of their marketing. And then, of course, also being in luxury real estate, I got to go to these amazing New York City apartments that I will never be able to afford. So that was like a huge perk of it as well. And it was just like a really fun introduction to like, yeah, like working in a huge city and having that like fun, you know, badass, powerful woman type of job. And having those like female leaders was really, really important for me at that point in my career because they were just, the company was opened by a woman and she started it all on her own and she was just amazing. So, yeah, I think that was like a huge piece that helped me like gain the confidence for my post-grad that I had so much to add to my portfolio. Like I had so much that I had done that was still live, and so many other people were like, here's this PowerPoint deck that I did as part of an internship project. And not to say that those things aren't valuable, because they totally are, but I just felt really, by the end of the summer, I felt so confident in the experience I gained from that small business that I definitely wouldn't have gotten had I been at a larger agency or firm.
Yeah, that's so great that you remained open-minded. Of course, you were frustrated or disappointed in the beginning. How long was it before you started to see that you were a valuable asset to the company and you were going to be able to add to your skill set?
I think it was like probably 2 weeks in, honestly. I was like 2 weeks in and they were giving me assignments, especially, I hate comparison is the thief of joy. I believe that fully. But at that time we're going back to these classes and I'm like, what is everyone else working on? And was really quickly learning that I was working on really, really important stuff for the company, and not just like, I don't think anyone was doing coffee runs per se,
Yeah.
but maybe some of those like lesser like work that nobody else wants to do. So I immediately kind of changed my attitude and really thought, okay, this is a huge opportunity for me to build my portfolio, to really exercise my skills and learn a ton.
I'm glad that you brought up the idea of comparison, right? Because that happens a lot, especially now with social media, but especially when you're in school, you're comparing everybody's experience, and then it starts to become like stressful because you're going to be competing for jobs, right? And actually, the episode that I just did before yours is on comparison.
Oh,
So
yes.
it's funny that you should bring that up. It hasn't aired yet. It comes out tomorrow, but yes, that's so difficult. Unless, like I said, thankfully it was only 2 weeks before you started to see like, oh, this might actually be a valuable experience. And then looking back, you probably had one of the most valuable
Yeah.
experiences, which it didn't
Yeah,
appear to
absolutely.
be at first, which is great. That's a great lesson also. Okay, so you had what ended up being a very meaningful internship experience, and then you were on your way to senior year of college, which I know can be really stressful. So let's get into what that looked like for you a little bit. So I definitely want to hear about how you approached the senior year stress, and then we can talk about post college because that's where it really gets exciting.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I was coming off of like the best summer of my life, living in New York City, like having my Carrie Bradshaw moment. I that's what I call it to my friends is my Carrie Bradshaw. Um,
Yes.
and just an amazing internship. And I was coming back and I had my capstone class. So that if you don't know what a capstone is, it's kind of like your final project for your college experience. And for that at Mizzou, it was to be part of like an agency project team. So you could apply to be the account manager, the graphic designer. And as you know, I was already really struggling to figure out like, where's my niche? So at one point, I was like, well, maybe I'm going to do video. That's what I want to do. So I applied to be a video producer, somehow got that. And that was my capstone class project. I was the video producer and I barely knew how to work a camera, but I knew how to edit it really well. So I was like, as long as I can get things into an editing software and I have the vision, but I was like, I really don't know what I was thinking. And that's just me being honest. Is like sometimes you are in this like craze of college and you're trying to figure out your journey and there's so many emotions, there's so much going on. So I was in my capstone and applying to internships like crazy. I had my portfolio. I'm sending my resume everywhere. I used everything from that summer internship to put in my portfolio. I was researching different cities that I wanted to live in because I loved New York, but I didn't know if like the little closet that I lived in as an apartment was for me. But I was looking there. I was looking really everywhere. And just hearing nothing. So that was also really, really challenging. I was like, oh, it's because I don't have CNN on my resume, which is not true. I get there. But so at the end of the first semester, I remember we had like your meeting with your professor to talk through all your group feedback on your capstone project. And I go into this meeting and I think I had gotten a C in the class, which was devastating for me. I was straight A student all through college. And I really think a lot of it had to do with me just being in the wrong role. I was in a video producer role. I didn't have the skills for it. I thought I could pull it off. But I really couldn't. And they were reading some of the feedback I had gotten from my peers, and it wasn't that great. And it was heartbreaking, honestly. It was heartbreaking. I cried in the meeting with my professor, actually. So that was a huge low point for me. And I felt like a failure. I felt like can't do anything right. I have no direction in life. I don't know what I'm doing. And I actually walked out of that meeting and my phone was ringing and it was a call from Lake Buena Vista, Florida. So if anyone is a fan, know that Lake Buena Vista is the small city where Disney is located in Orlando. And I answer the phone, like, like trying to brush away my tears from like one of the heaviest meetings I've ever had in my college career, feeling the lowest I've ever felt. And it was a recruiter at Disney saying, hey, we received your resume and we want to set up an interview with you. Do you have your schedule available? And I'm like, like anytime, any day is good for me. It was like going from the lowest of low to the highest of high and just feeling like when I didn't even believe in my own self, someone out there believed in me. That was such a impactful moment for me. And yeah, it was a huge lesson because I think I think me being in the wrong role, I took it personally as like a reflection of me and my skills, and felt like that meant that I was a failure, but it really just meant that I wasn't in the right role and I wasn't doing the right thing. But that actually drove me so much closer to doing the right thing, So it is a full circle moment. And I think people don't always talk about their failures. And it feels a little bit embarrassing to be like, yeah, I got a C in my capstone in college class, but, look at me now. So like you can get a C and you can have low moments and you can get really bad feedback from your peers on a group project, which had never been the case for me because I was always, the leader of the group project and doing all the things. But it was a rough year for me. And senior year can be really, really challenging and really confusing. And where do I want to be with my life? And what do I want to do with my life? So kind of having that moment and then it turning around to getting that Disney interview. And then, of course, nailing those interviews and then getting the role was just such a full circle moment, really.
Yeah, that's such an important lesson too that you just said. Like, just because this one placement was not right for you doesn't mean the whole, everything is thrown out. It's not all or nothing. And rather learn it than like in your career as well, and how to navigate that and how to take criticism and move on and then know that it's temporary. And literally within the next minutes, you could have one of the highest moments of your life. It's always darkest before the dawn, right? Like, that's such an important lesson, I think, too.
Yeah. And knowing that feedback is not always personal. I think I took that so personally at the time. And it was so much a product of the environment I was in and what I was going through at the time. And that had no reflection of me as a person or my skills. It was just the wrong time and the wrong job and the wrong role. But that didn't mean that like my career was over. So that was a great lesson to learn very early in college. And then kind of something that I brought with me into my first job post-grad, which happened to be an internship.
So before Brittany gets into her post-college life, the exciting stuff, we're going to take a quick little break and then we'll be right back. 100% of men and women have hormones. And with the increased presence of processed foods and environmental toxins, it's more important than ever to make mindful choices in the products we use every day. That's why I trust Hue and Grace. High-performing, clean products designed to support hormone health while reducing exposure to harmful chemicals. Because this topic has been my primary focus since ending birth control in 2024 in an attempt to regulate my changing midlife hormones, after making healthy swaps in my diet, personal care products, and exercise routine, I've been able to lower my dose of anxiety medication I once relied very heavily on, and have restored balance to my nervous system and cleared up the brain fog I was experiencing in perimenopause. Hue and Grace has played a key role in this transformation, offering safe, effective, non-toxic solutions that support my wellness journey. If you listened to episode 16 with certified Mayo Clinic health and wellness coach Tracy Danielson Mitchell, you heard our talk about the importance of hormone health. Coming in March, I'll be doing a deep dive into heart and hormone health on my Live and Learn Patreon, where I'll list all the tests, supplements, and product swaps that have helped me balance my hormones in my 50s. Plus, Tracy will be back to answer all your heart and hormone health questions at the end of the month. If you're on this journey with me and are interested in exploring Hue and Grace's trusted, non-toxic products, visit my link at hueandgrace.com/lessonplan to receive 10% off and free shipping. You can also reach out to me at any time with questions at nextlessonplan@gmail.com. Live and learn with me as we focus on living fully and feeling our best. Visit hueandgrace.com/lessonplan to see how easy it is to start making some healthy swaps on the way to non-toxic living. So we're back from break and we're ready to hear all the exciting details of what happened after the calls from Disney and how that played out and where it led her today.
Yeah. So when Disney calls, you answer. And I had just been so excited for the opportunity. I had some other interviews for different internships at other companies. I was interviewing with a agency in Nashville. But I just really, really wanted to focus on this Disney opportunity. I felt like it was, I grew up a Disney kid. I went to the parks all the time. So, Orlando was not on my short list of cities that I wanted to move to, but I just felt like this was the right opportunity for me. So I packed up all my stuff. I moved across the country to Orlando, Florida, not knowing a single soul. Went from, a student sleeping in till noon every day to a 9 to 5. And that was a jarring moment. And I'm sure other people who've graduated college can also attest. It is jarring to go from, the student life to the real life. But the internship was amazing. I have to really credit my leader, Kayla, because she saw my talent and really let me thrive and helped pave opportunities for me within the internships that just made me stronger in all of my skills. So one of the things, so when I got the internship, it was a social media and communications coordinator internship. And I just thought, I'm going to go down there and take pictures of the castle all day. I'm going to be in the parks. I'm going to be, doing all this fun fairy pixie dust stuff. And I got there and they were like, you're going to be in the talent acquisition marketing department. And I was like, what the heck is talent acquisition marketing? So instead of my job being attracting customers to come spend their money at Disney, it was attracting job candidates to apply for a job at Disney. And on top of that, I was not in the, parks vertical. I was in the technology vertical. So I was specifically working on campaigns to help attract technologists to join Disney. So it wasn't that fairy pixie dust magic that I thought I was getting myself into. So it felt kind of like, what did I get myself into at first? And, there was a lot of fears then of was this the right choice for me? But also it was a huge opportunity to learn a business that I didn't know a lot about. And I felt, my leader, Kayla, was so supportive and so knowledgeable. And I just knew I wanted to learn from her. And she really let me grow in so many ways. So I knew that I had to turn this internship into a full-time job. It was kind of a risk, moving across the country. And that was kind of it was Orlando or bust at that point. So I do have a competitive side, as you probably know, Rachel.
Yeah.
As my former gymnast self.
Yep.
I had these 6 months of this internship to really prove myself and get this role. And there were 8 of us interns. And I knew that it wasn't everyone's just going to get a job handed to them. So I did my assigned work and I did it quickly. And what I then tried to do in that internship was really look for gaps in what needed to be done with the department or, things that they weren't doing that I could fill with my passion and my expertise. So during this time, aesthetics were a huge thing on Instagram. Everyone wanted their grid to look a certain way and use the same filters and things like that. So I went to my boss, Kayla, and asked, is there anyone looking at our Instagram, as a full grid and being planful about it? Are we planning it? Or is it just kind of whenever a photo that looks nice comes in, we post it? And I gave her so many ideas of how I would handle it if I was handling the grid. And, I'd already mocked up a few slides. I had edited some photos that we already had in our photo library. And she really loved my ideas and then was willing to help me get presentations with some of the higher ups. And eventually I got approval to manage the Disney Careers Instagram on my own, which was not something that interns got to do. So that was a huge responsibility, and it helped make me it kind of made me, what's the word? Oh my gosh. Indispensable.
Mm-hmm.
It made me more indispensable as an intern, and it really drove that need to solidify my spot as a full-time employee. So if you're an intern, I think the biggest lesson here is to look beyond the scope of what you're doing and look at what the company needs, look at some gaps that aren't being filled, and think about how you can use your expertise and your skills to fill those gaps. Because that really makes you more indispensable, and that makes the team go, oh, I didn't even know we needed this, but now we definitely need this, and we cannot lose this person. So another thing too is that when you're an intern, like, people are really blind to things that are happening in their department. So you're kind of this new voice coming in, and things that maybe no one even saw before, you're coming in and being like, oh, why do you do things like this? And ask those questions, because there's usually not a good reason for the way that people are doing things. So I would say any internship, people have always welcomed me, and I, as an intern manager, I'm always welcoming new ideas, new ways of doing things, which can really help make you, more of a solid spot on the team and make people see you as not just an intern, but actually a member of the team and someone that we can't lose and let go of.
So I'm guessing, because I know you and I know your journey, that you did launch this into a full-time job.
Correct. Yes. So I went from the social media and communications coordinator to a communications coordinator role. I got a 30-minute meeting on my calendar that said quick connect, and it was for the next day. And I spent just so much time freaking out about that because I had no idea what it was about, but it was with my boss and my boss's boss. So I was a little bit nervous, but I got into the call the next day, or it was in person at that time. So walked into the office, and they said, we want to offer you the full-time role as a communications coordinator. And I think I blacked out because I was so excited. I was like, dream job, dream company at Disney. Oh my gosh. And I said yes on the spot. I was like, yes, yes, yes. It was like a proposal, to be honest. Like that's how I felt in the moment. I was like, someone got down on a knee, and I blacked out and just said yes. And the next day, I'm telling my parents, and I'm like, I'm so excited. And they're like, oh, well, how much are you getting paid now? And that's really when I was like, ooh, well, they said it's $2 an hour more than what I was getting paid before. And my parents were kind of like, don't you think you're worth a little bit more than that? And I was like, you could be right about that. So I had not even thought about the money at that point. But, of course, my parents, like, I did have student loans that I needed to start paying off. And, that was something to be considered. I mean, it's your career. You should be, earning what you're worth. So I went in the next day, and I talked to my leader, and I said, hey, I'd like to negotiate the salary for this new role, or the hourly rate at that point, because I was still hourly. And they basically said, well, you already verbally accepted, so that's all we can do. So, I look back on that. I regret not negotiating at that time, but I didn't know better. And I think this is another lesson that I want to give to young people, is to never feel like you're put into a situation where you need to accept something on the spot. I was just so happy with that internship and so happy with how things were going. I didn't see really the bigger picture. And of course, I stayed with the company for another 2 years after this all happened. So it wasn't like a make or break with my career. But when I look back on it now with more perspective, I definitely feel like it's important to look at the fine print of things and not just accept anything on the spot. Even if it is your dream job and it feels like everything is perfect, receiving an offer, that's really your opportunity to negotiate. And I think that women especially struggle with this because they feel like maybe they're less deserving of more money or whatever it might be. So I always say the worst thing that they can say is no. And at least you can say that you tried then. So I think at that moment it was tough for me, but it was a lesson learned the hard way, of, receiving that offer and being disappointed or being so excited on the spot. I didn't even have a chance to be disappointed about the pay. And yeah, I think it's important to talk about pay transparency, when it comes to career, especially when you're early and starting out.
Yeah, how would you know this is your first opportunity to like negotiate? You were an intern, that's your first full-time job. You don't even know to say, could I take 24 hours? Because you just wanted to say yes, because of course you're like, don't give it to anybody else, right?
Right.
But to just say like, it's okay, it's such a great lesson. Can I have 24 hours to think it over? I will get back to you. But you don't know when you're brand new and you're just so excited. Like you said, you had a good experience. That's a really good thing to share. So thank you for being honest about that and sharing that. So you stayed there for 2.5 years?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
I stayed there for 2.5 years. And then the pandemic hit. I think everyone my age probably has a story, or your career journey always has the story that says, and then the pandemic hit. So, and I was furloughed for a while, and I was called back on the skeleton team. I felt at that point that I was due for a promotion. I was working outside of my scope, but it was also this time where it was like, how dare you ask for they didn't say it like that, but it just kind of was like, it didn't feel like the right time to be asking for things, because we were just lucky to be alive. And so it was hard for me as someone who, as you can tell from this career journey, I've always been so driven. I want the next step, I want to climb the ladder, I want to get there. And then this pandemic felt like it was really slowing things down. So I really didn't want to leave Disney. That was never my goal. I really wanted to when I first joined, I was like, I'm staying here forever. This is it. But again, like I said in the beginning, let yourself, change as you go on, and let yourself make different decisions for yourself. So I saw an opening at another company, now called Travel and Leisure Company, which was formerly Wyndham Destinations. And it was for an employer brand specialist role. And so I was in that talent acquisition marketing role, which is similar to employer brand. It was all like marketing within HR. So I knew I had this kind of like niche expertise that like I could definitely do this role. I read the job description. I was like, I could do this with my eyes closed. Like, this is the job for me, but do I want to leave Disney was really the big question. So I had my interviews at that company, and I made probably what felt like the hardest decision in my career thus far, to leave my dream company, to, go for a higher role, a higher paying role. I think that was a piece of it too at that time. When I got that offer, I didn't even know I was worth that much. And that was a really eye-opening moment for me. So I took that role. I cried on the call with my manager, Kayla, who I mentioned. She was such a great mentor to me. And that was one of the hardest part was leaving the people, because I still am in touch with all of my friends from Disney. It was truly one of the best experiences working there, and for a company so large. But then, so I moved over to Travel and Leisure Co. And I went from a team of 50 people doing recruitment marketing to a team of 2.
Oh my.
And that was a jarring experience. So that was a huge shift. But in that role, I really got so much exposure to leadership, because there was only so many people doing my role. So I had to be the one to talk to our chief people officer, our chief human resources officer, higher ups within the company. And I was able to travel a bunch during that role too, because we had, our resorts all across the country. So I had such good opportunities there. I got to be my little jack of all trades there as well, because there wasn't so many people on the team. So I was doing a lot more strategy work. And that gave me kind of such a varied experience from Disney, because Disney's a really traditional company, very hierarchical. And then I went to Travel and Leisure, where I'm getting phone calls from higher ups that I never even got the chance to talk to at Disney. So it was definitely a very contrasting experience, but I feel like it it led me to where I am now 100%, because if I didn't have two drastically different experiences and I wasn't able to, gain that experience from each one and see how different companies operate differently, and like, pull things where I'm like, oh, we were doing it really well at this one and we were doing it really not well at this one, and like vice versa. Cause like, every team does things differently. Yeah, that was invaluable to where I am now. If I hadn't had that opportunity, I wouldn't have learned half the things that I know now. So yeah, that was a great step.
Another one of those situations where it's like you're learning as you go and you don't know what you don't know, and everything in your career has been a stepping stone, it feels like, right? With a lesson learned, definitely. So how long were you there?
So there I was at Travel and Leisure for about 2 years. And again, I think I was ready for that next step. I was ready for manager title. So I felt like I was doing the role of a manager, but I just really wanted that title. And I saw a job opening at Sephora, and it was for employer brand manager. And I could not apply to that. Like I was like, this is what I've been working for. I really liked the company. I really liked who I was working with, but once I did the interviews at Sephora and met my now leader and everything, it was just, it just felt like everything was falling into place. I met my now leader, Claire, and she and I felt like our interview was just a conversation. It was just like we were jumping off of one another, pitching ideas, talking shop, if you will. And it just felt like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. And that was just such a amazing experience. And when I got the offer, again, it was like when I got the Disney offer, I was like, oh my gosh, dream job, dream company. I can't believe this is actually happening. And when I got there, it was actually one of those moments where this is when I really had imposter syndrome, because I got to my first calls with Sephora and everyone on the calls were smarter than me. And I think that was like the first time, not the first time in my career, that sounds so bad, but it was like one of the first times in a long time that I felt like I was sitting in a room and I was not the smartest. I wasn't even close to the smartest person in the room. And I was like, did I just talk myself into something that I can't do? Or, so I was having all this imposter syndrome where I was like, I don't know if I'm qualified for this, even though I knew in my heart I was. It was just, a lot getting in the way. And one of my first assignments in my new role was to pace out a budget. And I was like, I've never even worked on a budget before. So that was like a whole thing. And I wanted to appear like I knew what I was doing to my boss. But at the same time, in my head, I'm like, what the heck am I doing? And so, yeah, so I had some tears for sure in the beginning, just with the nerves of just, am I going to be able to perform? Am I going to be able to show them that I really am the great hire that they made? Like, I really wanted them to know, like, I'm really good at what I do. Just give me a second to do it. Like, give me a second to prove it to you. So I learned a lot about budgets. I met with my accountant, finance person separately, and I was like, teach me everything, tell me everything. And he did, and he was great, and he walked me through it. And that's one thing I'll say about Sephora is that you can email or ping or anyone in any department, and they will spend 30 minutes with you and tell you anything you need to know. And they are so helpful. And I immediately knew that culture was something I wanted to be a part of and something I wanted to stay part of. And yeah, I've been there ever since. And I'm super proud to say that I just 2 weeks ago, during my annual review, was promoted from manager to senior manager. So woo-hoo! I'm here to stay. I love my company. I love where I am. And I'm super proud of myself for, even just going through it now on the podcast and looking back on so many like really low moments. It really all drove me to where I am now. And that's something to keep in mind for anyone listening. If you have had those low moments recently or going through one right now, it's all, rejection is redirection. It's all leading you to a better, brighter future.
Oh, I love that quote. Yeah. And not only are you feeling like you're in the right spot with your career, but you are back in the Midwest.
Yes, yes. So when I got hired for Sephora, our corporate offices are actually in San Francisco, which is funny because that kind of also feels full circle from that moment. And so I get to go to the offices 4 to 5 times a year. So I'm in San Francisco a bunch, seeing the team that's hybrid there. So I'm personally fully remote. Some other of our team members are fully remote, but many of them are hybrid in San Francisco. And I was started at Sephora, I was still in Orlando. And, I talked to my boss and I said, I think I'm going to make a personal decision for myself. And I really feel like the Midwest is calling me back. It's calling me home. I had a really good run in Orlando and it just felt like it's time for me to do something for me. And so I visited some of my friends here in Chicago and I just fell in love with the city again. And I made the decision to move, and with full support from my company, from Sephora. So I feel very, very lucky that I'm able to do this job remotely and live in the city that I love, get to pursue my dreams.
That is so amazing. So really, you could work from anywhere.
Yes. And actually, for our hybrid employees, now I'm going to just sound like a Sephora mouthpiece, but for our hybrid employees, we do have a program called Work from Anywhere July. So the whole month of July, you can work truly from anywhere. So it's actually an opportunity where people will work from, countries abroad. So actually last summer, I worked from London and I was able to go to the Sephora London office and work from there and meet people there. So Sephora has some really great work-life balance programs.
So they encourage, they want people to get out and have those cultural experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have no meeting Fridays, as much as you can, of course. And then summer Fridays in the summer. So that means you log off at 1 p.m., which is great, as long as you get your work done, of course. And then, that whole month of July, it's all work from anywhere, as long as you confirm with your leader timing and what times you're going to be online and everything. It's a great opportunity.
Wow.
And a lot of my coworkers take advantage of it, and it's really exciting. It's really fun.
Sounds like an excellent workplace culture for sure.
Yeah. Which makes it very easy for me to promote as the employment manager. So
yeah, exactly.
Makes my job very easy because we have such a great culture to promote.
Yeah, that's awesome. Brittany has sprinkled a ton of really valuable lessons throughout this episode, so we're going to wrap it up. She has an assignment, a little bit of homework, and some takeaways based on all of the lessons that she has here. I think they can apply to any age. We were talking about how as you age, your values shift and what you once thought was important is no longer a high priority for you. And I think, I can definitely attest to that and why I decided to make such a huge decision at this point in my life, because things that were once important or were once a passion changed. And in Brittany's story, you can tell also that she has had those same experiences. So what do you have for us to take with us based on all of your wisdom, Brittany?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's kind of been a theme throughout my career journey is really checking in with yourself and asking yourself, am I happy with where I'm at? What would make me happier? And that doesn't always have to be career driven. So, with my move to Chicago, that was really personally driven. That was me knowing that I'd be feeling more at home back in the Midwest and knowing that was the next step for me. But just your whole career journey, I think it's really important to ask yourself as you're going through things, is this still suiting me? Is this still something that's giving me joy, bringing me joy? Do I still feel that drive, that passion? And if you're starting to lose it, ask yourself why and where you want to spend more energy and where you want to take your next step. And it could be something that's unexpected and something that maybe your 16-year-old self that was watching 13 going on 30 and wanting to work at a magazine did not expect for yourself. But I think employer brand manager at Sephora is a great backup to magazine editor at huge magazine in New York. So don't overestimate how hard it is to change your life. You have the power to change your career path, change your life, change the direction you're going. So take the risk and yeah.
Yeah, that could have been the exact words that I said at the beginning of this podcasting journey for myself, right? It's like, how many more years are you going to say, I wish I would have done that, or I really need to make a change? And I talked about this, I think, in Blake's episode too, where it's like, you're never going to be younger than you are today. You know, time is going to continue to pass. You're never going to get this chance again. And I think it's hard. You know, your comfort zone is your comfort zone for a reason. And it's difficult to, you know, take risks, especially, you know, I usually play things quite safe. But I really think if you have a pull, and it goes along with those values changing, like, what do I want my life, my whole life, not just my job, but my whole life? What do I want that to look like? And I think so many times, and this happened to me just because if you have kids or, you know, you're in a marriage and it's like, well, you feel like you don't have a lot of wiggle room. You're kind of stuck in a situation. But now that my daughter is going off to college and I have a little bit more freedom with what I can do with my life, it's like, well, if not now, when? I'm 51 and, you know, I had thought about doing a podcast for like 2 years and I just, you know, you can continue to delay and delay and delay. And I always am that person, though, and maybe you're like this too, where it's like, I want the crystal ball where I can see 10 years from now, and am I going to be where my 16-year-old self thought I was going to be? But you don't know. I even had a guest a few episodes ago, Michael Hernandez, who changed I stopped asking the question, you know, like, what's your next goal? Because he's so accomplished and he's like, I don't set goals. I just follow my curiosity and I follow my passion. And I was like, boom.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The curiosity thing too, because I think as we're talking about this, the more I'm thinking like, you know, sometimes you don't always know what is next. You know, you don't know, like, you can check in yourself and say, okay, I know I'm not happy and I know that this isn't suiting me, but I don't know what's next. Just try something, you know, like get yourself out of where you are that feels unhappy, but try something new. And that might not be the right thing. Like I was talking about, the video producer thing did not work out for me. Graphic design did not work out for me. But those things that I did that weren't the right thing led me to where I am now. So do the wrong thing, you know, do the wrong thing sometimes and try something. I even tell people like trying to get into corporate America, they're like, I don't know what department or whatever. It's like, just get a job in corporate America and then have then have coffee with everyone, you know, just meet people, talk to people, ask them what their job is, see what really attracts you and what's, you know, oh, that sounds interesting. And then have that curiosity. I love that line about curiosity. I think that's so important to have when you're thinking about your next step.
Yeah, it almost, now that I look at that question, I'm like, oh, I'm regretting ever asking that question, because it's almost like having a goal, you're pigeonholing yourself because you don't know what you don't know, right? And until you have the next experience, you learn from that experience, or it introduces you to experience you didn't even realize was out there. And if you say, well, I can't follow that path because I'm working on this goal, it can maybe even hold you back. And so I've
Right.
kind of reframed how I think about that. Like, yes, of course, there are things that we want as far as our values and ways we want to live aligned to our values, but it doesn't have to be a goal. It can be, I think I'm going to follow this passion, or I think I'm going to,
Yes.
I really want to learn more about this. So that's kind of changed my perspective, which is why these conversations are so fun. So I really appreciate all your time, Brittany. I'm just so proud of you, and I love following your journey. I've been following it ever since you left high school. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been so much fun. I love talking to people starting out in their career and giving them this really honest, the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads, the uglies, vision of, like what it looks like when you're trying to build a career. Even if you do have a clear vision, it can still look kind of like a roller coaster. So, yeah, I'm also totally open if any, younger people or anyone really wants to reach out and talk to me about my career journey, or learn a little bit more, or have any questions about what I do at Sephora. I'm totally happy to talk with anyone.
That's awesome. I will make sure to drop your contact information into the show notes, and I'll be promoting you on my social media, and I can tag you there so people can find you there as well. Brittany's journey is such a great reminder that dreams don't have to stay the same to be meaningful. Her story shows that it's okay to pivot, take risks, and embrace new opportunities, even when they weren't part of the original plan. Whether it's stepping away from an industry you once loved, learning to negotiate your worth, or choosing growth over comfort, every career move teaches us something valuable. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to let go of a childhood dream to pursue something even better? Share your thoughts with us on social media at Life's Next Lesson Plan, or drop a comment wherever you're listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating and review, and share it with a friend who might need to hear this message today. You can also find all the episodes we referenced today, as well as many journalism resources to use in the classroom, at Life's Next Lesson Plan on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time for another inspiring conversation.